Hey, welcome back to Adventures in One Love. My name is Dennis. I'm doing a reaction to a video from a minimalist channel, Gabe Bult. And today he's going to talk about 5 ways to find the things that matter. Now, he does not come from this from a Christian worldview, from a biblical worldview. But I want to look at some of the questions he's asking and really see how they apply to our lives. So let's get in the video.
The last couple of years, I've left my job. Meredith left her job. We moved 3 times. We had a miscarriage with our son. And now almost 2 months ago, we had our daughter, Laura. There's just been honestly a lot going on. And it's made me reevaluate some things and really ask, what are those things that matter to me?
Such an important question. What are the things that matter to me? Now, we as Christians, we have to realize what is important to us in our lives. And the first thing that is important to us should be our relationship with God. If we're married, second should be with our spouse. Third should be children then, because our children we're going to raise them, grow, and they're going to leave, but we're still going to be married after that. So that's why our spouse comes before our children. Fourth, we get into career, to jobs, to then maybe even ministry and those steps. We have to put things in proper order and then arrange them in our life accordingly to that. Recently, I watched a video that really talked about that, or it was a podcast.
I say the mistake that most people are making in this hour is, how do I fit a little bit of God into my busy life? When in fact, what we need to do is to restructure our lives that begin with God and then build outward from there. And you kind of see, what else do I have room for?
God is a priority. It's similarly to tithing. We teach with tithing that you pay the tithe first, right? And there's some debates on whether people should tithe or not tithe, but I think it's unquestionable that Christian believes that we should be giving, regardless if you think the 10% is like a rule or not. But when I get paid, what I do is I give first, right? It's the first line on my budget. For me, I put tithing, right? So I put the first line on my budget as tithing, because I'm going to do that first before I spend the rest of my money. And in the same way, the way we organize our time in our life, we should be putting God into it first and then filling in the rest of the things.
Another thing that I think really matters to us is having a lack of stress and mental clarity, and doing whatever we can to protect those 2 things. Because me personally, I struggle with easily getting stressed out or anxious or depressed or any of those things. So I work very hard to create an environment that I won't have any of those things happen to me. And sometimes if you just let life live you instead of you living your life, things get crazy and it can kind of get out of hand.
Stress can be such a big thing in our lives. And I know that in general, we think of stress as a bad thing. That's the first thing that came to me when I watched this. And he's like, I'm trying to get rid of stress in my life. And in reality, working out is a type of stress. We put stress on our muscles and we get stronger. Because stress encourages us to do certain things. It's when we're overly stressed that it really becomes an issue. So I think that's really what he means. He's not becoming overly stressed, but I like how he talked about being healthy, being fit, putting things in programs to keep the stress low. And I think that's important in all our lives. I think that's biblical as well, to make sure that we're taking care of our lives, that we're taking care of our temple, which would be our body, because the Holy Spirit lives inside of us, right? So we want to be eating healthy, getting exercise, and that is a method for getting rid of stress. We want to make sure that we're keeping relationships with people, that we are in communion with others, that we can have people to share with, to talk with, and that in that process that we can process things and be able to relieve stress and not feel alone. But we're also encouraged to be with them, and they can help carry our burdens if necessary, that we have that community. Another thing is that we're not overburdening ourselves like in that first step, that we're not putting on too much stuff, and we're realizing that we may have to say no to certain things, that we don't have that responsibility or the mentality thinking that we have to take everything on, and we have the ability to say no.
We've been working really hard to avoid lifestyle creep, which is pretty much just as you earn more money, you tend to spend more money. There are people who earn $50,000 a year and $500,000 a year, and they're in extremely similar boats. This person just might have a bigger house and a bigger car, but they might have a lot of debt and all their expenses are higher. So we're trying to make sure that we're keeping our current lifestyle and still working on trying to raise our income as much as possible, because having that financial security, having the emergency fund, having investments and financial stability, all that generally leads to less stress.
Amazingly, people can be making totally drastic amount of money but still be broke. right? Rich but broke. Early in my life, I realized this, and learning through reading books and talking to mentors that you see that. I know even for myself, sitting in this house, we've lived here for almost 15 years. And when we first moved in, I probably made half as much money as I do now. Or at least as a family, that's true. And even though my income has doubled since then, I still often find myself thinking like, man, I just don't have enough money, which how did I have enough money when I only made half as much? It's crazy to live here. Now, of course, there's inflation and there's cost of living increases and things like that. But in reality is that we've taken the money that was an increase and I changed how I spent that money. Where we were frugal before, I maybe be a little more, right? We have more cell phones, we have data, I have faster internet, I've upgraded things. Here I am sitting talking to two cameras on my desk in a streaming setup, right? And cameras aren't cheap. So that is a decision that I made, and I spent money on that where maybe I could have been more frugal. To me, that part is important, not just because for our well-being, right, as emergency funds and things like that, so that we can be stable and have less stress because we're not worried about money like down the road, but it also opens up the environment for us to be more generous to others. When you don't have bills, when you're not in debt and you're not making monthly payments on a bunch of different things, that frees that money up to be used in different ways, to save, to invest, but also to give to those in need, to be moved by the Holy Spirit and be able to bless others in those times.
Another thing we're doing is keeping our stuff creep, which I just made up off the top of my head here. And it's that idea of as we have a daughter, as we have a different house, as you progress in life, you collect more stuff. And making sure that because minimalism is a journey, it's not a one-time thing, that we don't think that, all right, we're there, we made it, we've got it all set, don't need to worry about it, don't need to keep those habits going, but we actually keep all those minimalist habits kind of going.
Minimalism is not just a one-time and done. So I'm not a minimalist. I like some of the ideas of it, but how is that appropriate for Christianity? That once we're saved, we're not just finished. Once we've read the Bible once, we're not just finished. It's a continual process. Through sanctification, we're continually becoming like Jesus. We're reading the Bible, we're praying, we're speaking with him, and we're going to be changing throughout that. Knowing that there is that process and that people are at different stages of that walk with God, and people go at different rates with God. Some people may change very quickly, some may change slowly, and that's okay. So I think that's the big takeaway I take from this. I do kind of agree with him. We got to be careful as the longer we live somewhere, we start shoving it more in our house. I know my wife, bless her heart, she has a great question for me every time I try and bring something home. And it's, where are we going to put that? Because she knows she doesn't want a bunch of stuff in this house. And I have a tendency to want to get stuff. We don't need a bunch of stuff in our house to have a good life, to have a good living, to enjoy our house. And actually, more stuff can cause stress and anxiety because you're constantly cleaning, trying to find places for things to go. So that it could be a good pointer from minimalism for sure. But more importantly, I think from the point, like I said earlier, is that we realize that we haven't made it in our Christian walk, that we need to continue to work on it. We need to continue to work on our relationships. We need to continue to pray, continue to read the Bible, and grow in those areas and not think that we've just made it. So that's my takeaway. And if you want to see another video that I reacted to, go ahead and click on this link where I react to a video that was talking about Christian content creators and how maybe we can look at ourselves and maybe doing it from the right attitude. Remember, it starts with one, and it starts with you. God bless.